So, following last week, 2 weeks ago, actually, last 2 weeks, we had Emma on, and she was talking all about conquering consistency and what that means. And after that call, myself and Marvin, we had a conversation, and one of the things that keeps coming up is like the dreaded, like crazy busy week where there's things that just come out of nowhere or things that are just urgent, require, that thing being prioritized. And so we thought a good way to sort of come off the back of, conquering consistency is to get a little bit more practical from the busyness side of things and give you almost a protocol or frameworks to follow at times. And so we really want to drive consistency in everything that we do, right? We know that in order to achieve what it is you want to be achieving, you need to be consistent in what you're doing. And that is, the behaviors, that is the training, that is the steps, that is the nutrition, that is the showing up even when you don't want to, that is all things discipline. And so we really looked at what are some of the common occasions that people potentially are disrupted by and derailed by. And we've actually gone through particular examples within this just to give it that much more use for you. Good evening, Asil. I think if I can, there we go.
Hi.
Hello, good evening. Fine. So we go into this, and really, we find the problems that come up a lot, right, in all of this is when stuff gets manic, it's stressful, and we don't necessarily know what to prioritize. We try and maintain normal, or we try and maintain everything that we're doing when life is simpler, when life is easy. And so we hold ourselves up to those standards when, conditions are different. Maybe we slip into the all or nothing, right? So just because we can't hit all of our targets, we can't go to the gym 4 times a week, we can't be perfect with our nutrition, we kind of say, F it, right? If I can't do everything, then I'm going to do nothing and everything falls off. Decision fatigue maybe takes over when it comes to the nutrition, and we just can't be sort of expending more energy, more time thinking about what I should eat and this. And so we tend to opt for more convenient things. And also, after such times when maybe things have slipped, we don't necessarily know how to resume or pick up where we left off. And so, what we wanted to do within this is we wanted to give you a series of frameworks for different types of busy weeks so that you understand where you should be focusing and what is going to be the biggest bang for your buck in terms of time and effort spent. We want to give you this simple, if X happens, then do Y. So you have this framework where you don't need to guess, you don't need to overthink. And one of the things within this is obviously the communication element. So you are going to have different scenarios, different situations come at you, and it's perfectly normal to not know how to deal with those things when they happen. So, with myself, with Malvin, in our groups, right? If you can clearly identify what is happening at the time, whether it's a mad sort of situation, or maybe the next week is just going to be crazy because you're traveling with work, or maybe you've got a deadline, or whatever it is, then we can help you optimize what it is you're doing or where you need to focus. But that all starts with communication. There's another important thing here, sorry, just in terms of the mindset side of things. And a lot of the time we can be thinking, okay, we're full go or we're nothing. We're not doing anything. And there is also beauty in maintenance, right? So maintaining the progress that you've already made to date at such busy times is a win, right? Because maybe at those times previously, you would have just sacked everything off and stopped and deprioritized and sort of given up for a couple of weeks. Whereas if you are to maintain some behaviors during that time, then that is a win for sure. Also, we're going to give you tools to reduce the decision fatigue, simplicity in training and nutrition. Marvin has actually gone into, he's had a deep dive into Hunger Station and picked out some convenient options as well. and also a return to routine strategy. So, what you should be doing after the craziness or the busyness has calmed down, how to resume with things without necessarily punishing yourself or without feeling like you're needing to catch up. And a lot of this really is the sort of mindset side of things that we'll get into as well. And of course, if you've got any questions as we go through this, please put them into the chat box because myself and Marvin obviously will be tag teaming this and we can sort of get back to you there. So when you were sort of putting in for the call, there was a question, right? So what was the last thing that derailed you? And thankfully, myself and Marvin have covered most of these. So it seems like we're doing the right thing. But travel, unplanned working hours, staying up late, not waking up early, starting a new job, group trips, family gatherings, being sick, vacation, an engagement party, and having to have all of these different stresses pile up while still wanting to maintain some sort of routine when it comes to working out in the gym. Obviously, there's the Ramadan preparations coming up as well. So I think this is a prime time to have such a topic, because ideally this is going to really help you over the next few weeks, years, decades, etc. Within our program, right, and you should all be familiar with this to some extent, we have phases, right? And this is all around self-mastery. So this is our self-mastery process. All of you will start in the discovery phase, understanding more about habits, behaviors, building these as a sort of natural part of your day to day, knowing what works for you, what doesn't, and really understanding what it is you need to do in order to move forward. When you come out of this phase into the growth phase, right, this is where we have to level up and evolve some of these behaviors. Where you start in your journey is going to be very different to where you have to go to in order to achieve what it is you want to achieve long term. And then obviously going into the thrive and mastery phase when all of these things come naturally, it's automatic, it is sort of smooth sailing, as it were. It's kind of intuitive now. The things that prevent us from moving from phase to phase or setting us back or really stopping this process, to be honest, are the things that derail us, right? So again, it is the busy weeks, how you deal with them. It is how you are able to be consistent all the way through, or at least maintain things and then go back to the levels of consistency. So really, like, dealing with busy weeks is going to be a natural part of the process. They're going to be there. They're going to happen maybe more regularly than we would like, but understanding how to deal with them at such times is going to be crucial for us to obviously work through these phases, build understanding, have go-to frameworks and actions, behaviors that you can do at such times to then, transform where we are. And as we know, as you move down these phases, this really is where that sustained lifestyle and body transformation ultimately happens, right? We build up the behaviors, we build up the thinking, the mindset changes, the shifts until we get to a place where, it comes naturally. This is where the lifestyle it comes naturally to us. It's a series of habits. We've got the discipline, the understanding of why it's important and how we do it and how it becomes a part of our life. So maybe I'll pass over to Marvin here, and he can take the reins for a bit.
So busy weeks don't require more effort. They require better decisions. And this is just because, there's so much else. There are a whole host of other things going on, right? So it is a little bit unrealistic to expect more effort or for you to be expected to do more things. And so we need to adjust the expectations, right? We need to be okay and understand that things are different. You have more on your plate, you have more responsibilities. So expectations need to be adjusted. We need to protect the fundamentals, right? All the things that we will dive deeper into, but the nutrition, the steps, the sleep, all these things that are really important. We want to make sure we are protecting these things because these are the cornerstone of us achieving success at the end of the day. And then we obviously need to avoid the all or nothing mindset because that all or nothing mindset is what keeps us in the same place, right? If we constantly are on or off, then you're not going to be able to transition through those phases and go all the way from discovery all the way to self-mastery or all the way to thriving. So we really need to be focusing on that mindset piece. So our key objectives in these times, when life gets really busy, we need to change our priorities, right? Your only goals during a very, very busy week are three. You need to maintain momentum. We want to avoid damage. We want to make it easy to resume, right? So we're maintaining the momentum that we've built over the last weeks, months, potentially years, right, of being on this journey. We want to avoid damage of succumbing to temptations at work because you have a really busy week, you're stressed, and you know that lunchtime or you're at a conference and there's all this food in front of you, where typically you would be able to make, you know, better choices, or you would be able to walk away from things that are in front of you. We want to avoid those things, and we, you know, obviously we'll get into how to do that. And then we want to make it easy to resume, because after the busy week comes, you're not just going to slot right back into your routine. I mean, ideally, we do it very seamlessly because you've protected the fundamentals. You know, we've done things that will allow us to make it very easy to get back into our routine. So busy weeks are not about containment, right? Or they're about containment, sorry, and they're not about optimization. We want to contain and maintain the things that we know we can do, rather than trying to optimize every little, you know, granular little thing, because there's a lot of things going on, right?
And I think here it's also worth mentioning that it's all subjective, right? So I'm sure everyone on this call will have a different definition of busy week, right? For me, I've got no kids, so everyone here with kids is probably like, Pete, you don't understand what it's like to be busy. Equally, you know, there may be someone in here who works in healthcare, right? And they're on call, they're back to back with patients, it's life and death. So it is subjective, but I think the most important thing is going back to that communication piece, right? Context is super important. And so whilst obviously myself and Marvin have been working with you, we have a good idea as to what, you know, is sort of on your plate. You are really the only one in the know, right? You're the only one who knows actually all of the commitments, all of the responsibilities that you have. And so when we discuss and when you flag this with us, we work out together what is best for you. You know, for example, you know, realistically, how many hours this week do you have to yourself? Are you going to be near a gym? Are you going to be in your routine? Are you going to be able to cook? Like, all of these questions come out from the unique situation that you are going to be facing. And so, you know, during peak stress, you have a limited bandwidth, right? And so it's really useful for us to try and reduce the amount of decisions and thinking you need to do by yourself. However, we need you to be honest and have the rationale appropriately behind the decision, right? And I think it's not just a one size fits all. Just like, you know, with the Ramadan stuff, we're preparing for the next group coaching call and the live in-person event. It's different for everyone. And so building this with you is going to be the most important thing. And, you know, that means sharing data, communicating what's happening on, like, if you have visibility, ask for help early so we can help plan and help you ease maybe that anxiety before you go into the busyness. And also we can, you know, troubleshoot and ask you relevant questions which you may not have considered. So, right, this is, you know, we're a team in this. We're all behind it.
Professional. بسوي
Nasawi. What are we doing? Let me mute. There we go. Okay. Marvin, actually, no, sorry, I'll crack on with this just for the moment. I was just muting.
On the communication piece, just to touch on that again quickly. I think there's also this sense of I'm letting my coaches down, or, you know, I can't tell them what's happening, or, you know, they don't understand, or whatever the case may be, right? So even though Pete doesn't have kids and doesn't understand what it feels like, right, there's still a certain level of understanding, having coached hundreds, potentially 1,000 plus people with kids, with all these different scenarios and situations. And so you communicating with us makes it so much easier for us to help you, right? So if we don't have information about what's happening in the context of your life, 6 weeks down the line, when we could have figured out what the problem was, how to kind of, structure your weeks in a better way, we could have mitigated the damage, if you will, right? That then caused into the snowball, and then now it's really hard to get out of it. So communication is really, really, really key, and it stops us from making assumptions about what's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, sort of AWOL, going AWOL, and whatever else. But we with you will discuss the best plan of action, right? Because some of you in conversations over time, like tracking can be like a burden. It can be one more thing that is tough for you to do in already a very busy day. However, we may have kind of come to the understanding that for you, if you stop tracking, then there's a sense of anxiety, loss of control, difficulty resuming once that busy period is over. If you continue, it may be too overwhelming. So this is going back to the fact that there's not a one size fits all approach here. Equally with training, right? A lot of the time when it's super, super busy and chaotic, we may say, okay, let's cut down the training. Let's look at the minimal effective dose. Let's go into maintenance. However, some people during such busy times need their training as a stress management tool or the mental health clarity that it potentially gives. There's other things to consider as well. Maybe it's not the ideal time to change training block. Maybe you need stability, predictability, and just getting into the gym and doing your thing. So these are all questions that we come up to and discuss with you. Equally, same things for steps. Sometimes it's a case of continuing this because it gives you that sort of sense of movement and eases any stress you might have. Equally, it may be a case of we need to reduce the target. And by doing so, because you're going to be moving less, maybe you need less carbohydrate. So this is something that then we can build into all things food journal. And maybe it's a time, depending on what your approach with nutrition is, that you look for external support. So, for example, maybe you've got the next 2 weeks at work, super, super, super busy. Maybe it's a good time to jump on a meal subscription for that time, just to, again, reduce the amount of decisions that you need to make and just have something there, convenient, practical, and, on plan. And so if training suffers and if steps suffer, nutrition is always the thing that is going to help maintain your progress. It doesn't mean that needs to suffer as well. And so let's delve into some real life scenarios. And I think, I'm sure people have seen like the Stretch Armstrong, right? You probably had that as a kid. Often it feels like we're being pulled in all sorts of different directions. So we have looked at 5 different sort of scenarios, basically. One where life happens and requires immediate attention. This is like the family emergency side of things. Maybe there's peak workload and your schedule is back to back. Maybe you're traveling midweek. Maybe there's big life transitions. Or maybe, sort of sounds like it is with Janine, there's multiple stresses at once, right? It's the daughter's sort of wedding. There's probably lots of different suppliers, people, flowers, sort of venue, all this kind of stuff that you need to consider and all adding sorts of or different sorts of stress. So Marvin, do you want to take the reins for number 1?
Yes. So like we said, this one needs immediate attention, right? So maybe your child is sick, there's a family emergency, there's a death, there's an unexpected obligation that you have to meet. So what usually happens is that training gets deprioritized, right? It's completely out of the window. It's something that you're not even thinking about because there's so much more on your plate, and that's what you're thinking about, right? So what you want to do here is assess your capacity, right? Reduce the expectations to training. So if you have seen the newsletter that we have been sending on Sundays, Solid Start Sundays, you would have seen the last one that came in, where it was talking about how you want to treat your training as insurance, right? And so walking into the gym and saying to yourself, I'm only going to do three exercises, right? Instead of doing the whole lot, let's say you have 6, 7, 8, you just walk in and you say to yourself, I'm going to do the 3, all right? And then that's it, and you're done. So you're reducing the expectations to your training. Meals, potentially become reactive. They're led by convenience because you are on autopilot having to deal with all these things, but you can still prioritize protein, right? You can portion control when you then sit down and go to eat. The routine completely goes out the window. I mean, there's no chance of any routine when you've had to rush your kid to the hospital. It's 5 a.m. You're in the ER and, oh man, it's just absolute chaos. So you want to remove all these extra expectations of, I've got to do this, 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 and cling on to the things that you can be within your control, right? So you want to make sure that what we deem as success in this situation is showing up at all, right? And controlling things that you can. You're not trying to control everything, but you take a hold of the things that you know for sure you can take control of. And then going into peak work overload. So the next one, where you've got back-to-back schedules and you've got deadlines. It's the end of year, which we've had with several people. Can't remember who. It must have been Lena, who was talking about end of year. We've got all these reports that we have to do, and then sometimes you've got end of month sales targets. You've got to meet your deliverables. You've got midterms, you've got finals, you're studying for your MBA. We know we've got a few MBA people in here as well. So what typically happens, training gets completely skipped and it feels like another stressor, like, oh my goodness, I've got to do another training session. So again, we can lean on the three, walk into the gym, I'm doing 3 exercises. Oftentimes what happens is you walk in, you say I'm doing 3, and you actually end up doing the whole workout. If you don't do the whole workout, it's also fine because you've done, most of the time when we program, the first few movements are your big bang for your buck compound movements. So if you're getting in three workouts or 3 exercises within the workout, you're doing the minimum effective dose, right? Hunger and cravings increase because the stress has gone through the roof, right? And so what we want to do here is we want to prioritize protein, because what happens is when we consume more protein, lo and behold, cravings dissipate a little bit and we feel fuller for longer, and then we're not reaching and everything doesn't seem so attractive anymore. The step count typically drops, so we can easily just reduce our carbohydrate intake. Why carbohydrates? Because that's not the most essential nutrient, right? Protein we want to keep because it keeps us full. It's good for recovery. It's good for preserving muscle or building muscle. Fats are important for our hormones, for our brain function, and all these things. Whereas carbohydrates is energy, right? And so if we're not using as much energy, therefore we don't need as much. Decision fatigue is a huge one, right? You're being pulled in different directions, right? And so it's really difficult for you to make decisions that make a lot of sense or that you would ordinarily make when it's a less busy week. So you want to increase your structure around the meals, having fewer decisions and repeat meals. And you'll see later on, we've got a few very practical ones that you can lean on. I find for us in our house, we have 2 to 3 meals that are like our go-tos. We don't even have to think about it. It's on autopilot, done within 10 to 15 minutes, and then that's it. We've got our nutrition covered. So I find that really helps, having a couple on hand that are easy to do. And then energy crashes, right? We are struggling with sleep. We are struggling with just functioning through life, really. And so you want to do the best that you possibly can to protect that sleep window. Maybe forego the Netflix, even though it's really comforting during these times. Pete, you handle these back-to-back weeks in this sort of way, don't you?
For sure, of course. I wrote this. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of an interesting one because like it's sort of what's been happening or what will be happening this week where things are really, really, really squeezed. And yeah, like I ordinarily have 4 to 5 training sessions a week. I'm looking then at like 3 now in terms of strength training. I'll still keep my running in, but within those sessions, I'm sort of doing, well, twofold. I'm performing exercises which I enjoy. So when I'm in the gym, like training is a pick me up rather than something that is just like, ugh, I've got to stick to the program, but the program isn't quite fixed to this week. So I allow myself some freedom there. And yeah, like honestly, the structure around meals is such a game changer. You know, my go-to, I'm sure you and your wife probably cook it slightly more excitingly, is just like chicken in the air fryer, put on some like peppers, carrots, and garlic, and then wraps. And that is my go-to meal. Super, super easy, hits the targets and keeps me full. And lastly, I think during these times, we are literally just in like mong out mode, right? We finish the day, sit in front of the TV. Yes, you want a takeaway. Yes, you just want to watch whatever's on Netflix or just doom scroll. But like the biggest thing you can do to pick yourself back up is like sleep. Because if then you go back to the next day with 5, 6 hours sleep, you're on the decline, right? And all of these things all of a sudden get harder. And so I know you just want to sit, do nothing, and mong out. But you know, it's forcing yourself to at least you know, prioritize recovery in that way.
Yeah. Why play on hard mode, right? By extending this period and making it more difficult and not sleeping.
So midweek travel, you know, this comes out a lot, whether people are going to Dubai, whether to Riyadh, and this is hotels, airports, unpredictable schedules, conferences, these sorts of things where itineraries or agendas can be jam-packed. And what usually happens, I'll restart when I'm back. You know, I'll just, you know, these 2, 3 days don't count. I think, do incredibly well actually with people maintaining their sessions, whether in hotels or body weight, maybe not doing as many, or maybe they do the same or more, but they're able to maintain their movement. Because if you are, again, if you are someone who's frequently traveling, whether it's 3, 4, 5 times a month, this needs to be a framework that you can stick to, right? I think eating becomes random, you know, whether it's at the airport, whether it's you know, going along with colleagues or ordering something. You know, there's always something better that you can choose, right? Always something better that you can choose. I think in the airport, in Jeddah Airport, you can literally buy the yogurt drinks, right? You can buy those, simple. So if you need a snack on the plane, then you've got something with 30 grams of protein in it, no problem. Equally, you can take them through with you and all else. And using those simple, easy meals, you know, for me, when I go, if I'm going somewhere, I'll have my callo meal with me. So at least I get that on the plane or take it afterwards, and it's a tick in the box again. At such times, steps can drop drastically unless you're someone who's sort of feverishly walking around the airport looking for your gate. And so this can be another opportunity to reduce the carbohydrate intake, to reduce the amount of calories coming in, because you're just simply not moving as much, and therefore you don't need as much fuel. So sometimes travel weeks can be maintenance weeks. Sometimes, to be honest, they can still be sort of progressive weeks. People can still make progress with them. It all depends on having a bit of a plan of action and ultimately following through. Now, the other one is big life transitions, right? And this is where there is going to be a big change to routine. This is marriage. Maybe you're moving in with your husband or wife, relocating city or country. Maybe it's a new job, pregnancy, new baby, all these sorts of things. And sometimes I'll restart when I'm settled. And let's be honest, with all of these things, I don't think there's ever going to be a point where you are settled. And what I like to think about is these are golden opportunities for you to actually disrupt bad habits and build good ones. Especially, you know, maybe, hopefully, if you're getting married to someone who also shares a passion or a pursuit of fitness. If you are, you know, starting a new job, that means a new routine, maybe a new wake up time, maybe new demands. And therefore, you can start these sorts of things by eliminating bad habits and building better ones. So don't just kind of have no clarity around the changes that are going to be required. Think about and plan out these realities of the new circumstances, of the transition, because sometimes actually it may be more convenient for you. Maybe. There's a lack of acceptance that goals may have to change. And I think Marvin has had this conversation a few times with people who have newly become pregnant, right? And it's then goals have to shift. And it's about resetting what success looks like in the short and the long term. And I think as we probably do a good job of this, is that you know, fitness, if you take a big picture view of it, this is something that you're going to have to work on to some extent for, you know, hopefully the rest of your life, right? And so goals are going to change, both in the short term and the long term. But the main thing is either you're consistent with what makes you feel good, feel strong, feel healthy, or at least you maintain the progress that you've made. Some of us just need a period of maintenance. If you've lost 10 kilos, for example, you know, we don't necessarily need to push you to the next 10, right? It's sometimes about accepting that, oh my God, I've done incredibly well up till now. Let's just sit here for 3 months and really, you know, appreciate and get used to the changes that have been made and then push on. So the same thing is true with these big life transitions. And then lastly, I think sometimes people just wing it and hope for the best. But always, if you're setting achievable non-negotiables, whether it's minimum standards for movement, training, steps, nutrition, then it's going to be all the more easier to build back when things are a little bit calmer and where you can ramp things up again if you've had an element of consistency. So yes, acceptance that the old routine is going to have to change. I've just pushed on, but the screen isn't loading. Digiga, there we go. Okay, so I think there's one more. So yeah, Marvin, multiple stresses at once?
Yes. What's the phrase? It never rains, it pours, right? Sometimes that happens, right? It's not just one thing, it's everything. You're busy at work, sleep is poor. Everyone wants to be going out at night. You've got home renovations, or there's like a big, like Rana recently, right? You had that whole situation at home recently. Maybe the maid is away, school run is on you, the kids are on, like just so many things getting thrown at you, in every different direction. So what usually happens is that, there's this mentality or this thought that I'll start again when things calm down. Well, the reality is the longer you take to start to get going, even with reduced expectations, the harder it becomes to get back on the horse, right? So we want to attack that problem before it continues to go on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so really important to communicate, like we said earlier on. When there's no clarity around the deadline, things typically stall. So you want to treat this like the new normal, like the previous slide where we were talking about big life transition. Treat this as a new normal as well, right? Reduced expectations or shifting that mindset towards, I've got to have a new routine based on what I've got happening at the moment. The gym routine gets interrupted, so you skip one session and then you skip a second. Before you know it, it's a third and a fourth and a fifth, and you haven't trained for, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. So decrease the volume, decrease the session length. I'll drum this again and again, go into the gym, say I'm doing 3 exercises, and then, see how it goes from there. Reduce the quantity of the training, right? So you are at maintenance, right? We're focusing on trying to maintain what we've done up until now. And so working and doing 2 sessions in the week, I actually find that, and I've spoken to a few people that have found it very helpful to do the same thing, where you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to choose one day during the week where I'll do my session. It doesn't matter what that day is. So on Sunday, you've got all these things happening. You say, okay, on Monday at 5 p.m., I'm going to do my session, no matter what happens. You go and do it. You're tired. You didn't sleep well. Everything is, getting derailed, if you will. You're still going to get that session in. And you go in with the mentality of, I'm getting it done. I'm decreasing the volume. I'm reducing the intensity, but I'm getting my session done. And then the second one you do on the weekend, because on the weekend, chances are there's not as much going on. And again, it's a non-negotiable that you set for yourself. At 12 p.m. on Saturday, I'm getting into the gym, and you go in and you do your workout. Sometimes people also just wing it and hope for the best, right? So we want to set real achievable non-negotiable. So like I've just mentioned with the training and with nutrition as well, having those few go-to meals really helps at a time like this. So mentally, we're shifting into maintenance mode, right? Because there's a lot happening. So it is very unrealistic to expect that you're going to be seeing the same progress you saw when you had very little or no stress, where now you've got 5, 10 different things that you're dealing with at the same time. Practical tools. You know how much we love to be practical. Pete, we've got our non-negotiables. Have these changed?
I think it's a case of, if nothing else happens, like protect these things. Because, we always say, I mean, we've got a few lines, don't we, Marvin, to be honest? It's progress, not perfection, right? And anything is better than nothing at the end of the day. And I think even when things are intense, right? There's things that we should be trying to protect, because a lot of you have done so well to build the habits in these. And I'm sure you feel a million times better that you are doing these things. So when it comes to the nutrition side, it's, protein intake, try and keep this target going. The vegetable, fruit intake, reduced carb intake, as we mentioned. If your movement is going down, you don't need as much fuel. and also minimize extras. So especially if you're office based or around people like that, then there's lots of things that can come in and creep in and be sort of very tempting through the day. And then at least some training, right? Doesn't have to be everything, doesn't have to be all the sessions, doesn't have to be all the sets, doesn't have to be all the exercises, but at least some. So you can reduce the sessions, reduce the length, reduce the exercises. As we mentioned, the sessions are planned in such a way that the first exercises are going to be the most impactful. So if you even just go in, do one exercise, two exercise, maybe three exercise, then you're still going to be making good progress. And it is the intensity as well that you're training at, right? At such times, we would much rather you give your effort to two exercises, 100% effort, and then skip the rest if you have to, rather than give 60% to the whole session and you're not really getting much benefit from it, right? Intensity matters there. Some daily movement, so steps, trying to manage that, and also maximizing sleep. And we ought to, again, I think this is easier said than done a lot of time, especially when you may have been on a really good run of things, right? You've got a good hot streak going on. But at such times, important to let go of perfection, chasing PBs, really accelerating towards an aggressive fat loss target, making up missed sessions. So there's some people, I still don't know how they do it, who maybe if they had a super, super busy week, they decide, okay, I'm going to do 2 sessions today and do maybe a full body session in the morning and then straight away after do an upper body session or something. Like, this is not encouraged. And the reason for that is going back to the point around intensity. There's no way you're going to be able to hit 80, 90, 100% intensity across both of those sessions. Whereas there's much more chance you're going to be able to do it across one of those sessions and therefore get more benefit from that. So it's not just around hitting the targets and catching up. It's about being effective with those things. And also comparing results, right? I know it's easy when we share your accountability to look at the weeks, right? And, maybe over a 3-4 week period or 5, 6, 7, 8 week period, the weight hasn't shifted. There's usually reasons for that. And I think a recent one, Marvin, was, a guy had his sort of 4th or 3rd child. And obviously, sleep is going to be wrecked. All these other factors are going to come in. So you can't be comparing such times to, when things were smooth and easy and, manageable. So what we really want to communicate here is that, easing off and taking your foot off the gas is a short-term strategy, which is going to help with the longer-term consistency. It is not accepting failure. It is not giving up. It is neither of these things. And again, going back to one of the earlier slides, if you are honest and if you are really, trying your best to do what you can, and, you're not just being like, yeah, but I want to take it easy, then, this is the best way forward, adjusting things accordingly. So that is why, again, communication is so important. Eating out guidance. So this is a picture I decided to put in because every time I ask for my eggs Benedict sauce on the sides, 50% of the time they get it right. I say sauce, barra, sauce on the outside, but sometimes they don't, and they cover it all in sauce. But Marvin, this was one of yours too. I'll let you do the next couple.
Yeah, like I said, the nutrition is something that we can really, control and have some sort of semblance of, I'm still maintaining a bit of a routine, right? And so having some guidance or some principles that you stick to during these really peak busy times is going to serve you really well in the long term. Ultimately, these 4 principles work for all times, but even more important and even more so during this really peak stress, to reduce decision fatigue, to reduce all the thinking that has to happen, all the preparation, all these things. So we'll go through real quick some of the slides that will have all the nutrition. But basically, the principles are, if you're going to be ordering out, because you probably will be during these busy weeks, you want to double the protein serving, because 9 times out of 10, the food that you're eating is, 10 grams of protein, right? You walk into a restaurant, you want eggs Benedict, Why do you think Pete has 4 eggs on there?
Because I'm
Double the protein,
greedy.
right?
I'm
Yeah,
greedy.
that too. But yeah, often it's 2 eggs, right? For your eggs Benedict. That's all of, 12 grams of protein when you're trying to hit, 100 plus grams of protein by the end of the day. So double that protein serving, double the veg servings, all right? Because that's also just going to fill up the meal, bulk up the meal, and help you feel a little bit fuller and not be tempted to go for the extras. Skip the sauces and the dressing, or ask for it to be put on the side, as Pete does, right? Sauce, butter, and use it sparingly when you do. Don't douse and drench, the eggs benny in the sauce. What's the point of having it on the side if you're then going to drench the whole thing in it, right? And then skip the juices, sugary drinks, fresh juices, because fresh juices are laden with sugar, and these are extra calories that are coming in that aren't necessary at this time. So water or sugary-free options instead during this time. And then the meals. So we've come up with, so these are basically principles, right? And so these are really 2 good restaurants that will follow a very similar principle in that you're going to restaurants where, or takeout places where you can make your own food, right? You can choose your own bowl. And this is perfect because then it makes you be able to use and follow those principles. So you walk into Fire Grill, right? As you're sort of picking your food, and you're going to go in for your chicken and shrimp, so you can double the protein, right? Following that principle before. When there's the carb sauce, we're going to go a single serving of carbs. Normally, it's like they want to put 2, 3 spoons of rice and quinoa or whatever else it is. So go for the 1 serving. Fajita vegetables, mixed lettuce, load up on the vegetables, right? We want 2 servings of veg there. And then the sauce or the guac on the side, because this can easily be a 300-400 calorie meal. Load up with guacamole, salsa, and sour cream, and all of a sudden you're closer to 1,000. So you want to be very cautious of all these extra things. And so the same formula would sort of work at Sprout as well, where you're basically choosing your meals on your own here. Pete, you, whenever you do eat out, right, this is sort of the process you like to follow too, right?
Oh, for sure. And to be honest, when it comes to ordering in, I always tend to find places which allow you to add more protein or extra chicken. Love an Archie sandwich at the moment after a run. I always add extra chicken. Nando's can also be a really good one, but also full of potential pitfalls. And yeah, like it's a look, because a lot of the time, right, protein is expensive for these restaurants, right? So they don't really want to give it away in the meals. And as you say, like you may get 10, 15, 20 grams of protein in a meal, which to be honest isn't enough.
Yeah.
So it's always worth kind of going to places which allow you to choose the protein source, the quantity, 2 servings, and allow that flexibility in that way.
And then you've got places like Right Bite where now you can actually, so we've basically gone with a cheat sheet, right? Where chances are you might end up at Mama Nora, or you might end up at a place like Right Bite. And so having these meals, like Pete and Malvin have gone through these, they've looked at these, they know that these meals are, quote unquote safe. And so this is what I'm going to go for. If you're going to go for breakfast burrito. Why? Loaded with protein, right? Majority of that meal is protein. Lunch, you've got Tuscan chicken, grilled vegetables, sauce butter, right? Your snack, if you are going to go for a snack, baked chicken tenders, sauce on the side. Dinner, high protein beef burger, and then you're swapping the fries for the Cajun broccoli. So this could actually be a whole day, right? So basically, when I was working this up, it wasn't necessarily to say that, this is what a whole day should look like. You're only eating the Right Bite, but it really honestly could. And this would be a great day. You've hit all your protein targets, right? Maybe you would skip the snack because this would be quite a bit of food. But if you're going to choose these individual meals because you know that you can't have breakfast or you're in a rush or it's super hectic, you order from Right Bite rather than having to go through our Fire Grill. I've got to walk through, I've got to choose this, I've got to pick this, just literally plug in Right Bite breakfast burrito, and this is my go-to for my breakfast. And places like Mama Nora, Al Ghazan, these types of grill-based places, you can really fall into the trap of the sauces. Well, I guess the extra garlic, the hummus, the breads, the pastries, all these things. So if you load up on the grills, right, focus on getting in as much protein as possible, and then you're swapping any breads for the tabbouleh and you're getting more, vegetables, if you will, and then you're skipping all the little extras. focusing on getting in no liquid calories and getting water and sugar-free drinks. So this, you could literally plug and play this and have these meals on hand for you on those super busy weeks.
Yeah, it's as you said, Marvin, it's kind of reducing the decisions, right? And if you have a series of go-to meals, whether you prepare them at home or you have them on whatever delivery app you use, it's very easy just to stop sort of thinking about, oh, what do I fancy? What am I craving? And just have these on autopilot, go to knowing that they're, ultimately sticking on plan and, being full of nutrition and protein and everything else. And yeah, when it comes to, I think, some of these meal plans, which we spoke about, sometimes you may need to sort of subscribe for a week, maybe 2 weeks. There's Fitness Empire, there's Fitness Kitchen, these sorts of places, along with these, where if you know and have the foresight that things are going to be intense, then just make things that much easier for yourself, right? Limit the amount of decisions that you need. And to be honest, what I've found is when I go for these sorts of meal subscriptions compared to what I'm ordering outside, right? This works out very cost effective, right? Because you're not spending 100 reals on a delivery of whatever 3 times a day, which kind of gets crazy when you think about the pricing and delivery and so on. And so I think the main thing here, once you have overcome your busy weeks, months, whatever it might be, you may feel like you've fallen behind, you've messed up your streak, you've let yourself down, you've disappointed us, you're feeling guilty for maybe buckling, not being able to manage things, that it's going to be impossible for you to get back to where you were, or maybe that fitness just isn't for you. All these things may be thoughts that are kind of coming around in your head. And I think instead of giving up and, thinking fitness isn't for you, it's an opportunity to adjust, to have a fresh start mentally, think big picture. Because if you think about, if you're looking at a year's journey, 52 weeks, and 5 of those are crazy, busy weeks where you've kind of, gone back to maintenance phase, think of the big picture, because I guarantee, the rest of the weeks tell such a strong story. And, as we said at the beginning, busy weeks are going to be a part of life, a part of this journey, and understanding how to deal with them is going to be one of the things that carries you through. Maybe punishing yourself, skipping meals, cutting all carbs, add extra sessions. It's simple, return to the plan. I know it may not sound sexy, it may not be the boost that you necessarily want, but return to the plan, because I guarantee if you see those targets 80, 90, 100% of the time, you're going to see great change. Focus on your targets, find your flow once again. And also, instead of thinking it's futile and there will always be something derailing me, treat a busy week as part of the process. As I mentioned, this is a learning opportunity. You being able to deal with these things is only going to strengthen your resolve moving forward. And you're going to overcome these challenges, and they're not going to be so scary or daunting, or they're not going to sort of knock you back maybe as they were before. So just to round off, really, busy weeks, inevitable. They're going to happen. Some people, they're going to be the sort of, more often than not, but it is subjective as well, right? So those feelings of overwhelm, back-to-back, packed schedule, let us help you with that, right? As we say all the time, we're a team in this. Know yourself, your triggers, your reactions, knowing that consistency beats intensity, and adaptation keeps progress alive, right? Being able to evolve, adapt, pivot, change will allow us to overcome whatever challenges are thrown our way. And there is no reset button, unfortunately. Maybe it's the beginning of a new year, I don't know. But, it's, I think, it's kind of like a mental switch, right? Where you're like, okay, it's time to get back on track. It's time to do this, time to find my flow. Let's just get back to the targets and focus on those. So, any questions? Marvin, any final thoughts from your side?
Yeah, I hope this analogy lands well. I think I actually did share it in the forum at the end of last year. So if you think of your journey as the lights being on, right? How the lights go on is either by using two things. You have a dimmer switch, right? Or you have a flick on and off. And so if you treat your journey more as the dimmer switch, where at peak times where you're super busy, you've got the busy week, life is insane, the dimmer goes, you use the dimmer, you kind of dial things down a little bit rather than using the flicker switch. When, there's a lot less going on, when you have a little bit more time, less responsibilities, you've got more room and margin within your life, that dial goes up and up and up. And so just having that sort of mentality and mindset really helps get rid of the on and off, right? Because if you're constantly on or off, you essentially are in the same place, 5 years down the line. Whereas if you're using a dimmer and you're on, kind of on, kind of off, and you're switching as and when based on your weeks, you'll actually make really incredible progress. So I hope that that helps to kind of get rid of the on-off mentality.